Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for September 13th, 2023. Today I'm going to take a look at some of the developments of the last days following the extraordinary events of the BRICs summit a couple weeks ago and the failure of the Unipolar order to impose its will at the G20 summit last weekend in India. But to actually understand the situation, it's important to get a sense of what we must do if we're going to take advantage of these tremendous potentials presented to us. And the most important thing is that we, those of us who are politically astute, who have awakened to what the threat to the world is from the unipolar order, we have to take it upon ourselves to change the axioms which determine the way most of our fellow citizens think, because of the effects of censorship, of lies in the media, the controlled flow of information, what's really called hybrid warfare, or technically that's what it's called, but it's actually brainwashing. Most people have no idea of what's occurring. So I'm going to present just a couple of aspects of this, but I want to call your attention to the extraordinary conference the Schiller Institute had on September 9th, an online conference. It's available at schillerinstitute.com in video format in an archive. Today I'm going to have a link to the powerful keynote address given by Schiller Institute chairwoman Helga Zepp-LaRouche. That will be linked in the description box. Now the point is, we know what's wrong. What's wrong is that power remains in the hands of individuals who run the global corporate conglomerates in finance, in real estate, in insurance, in raw materials, big pharma, and so on. And they put their profit above the interests of people. But there's a rebellion underway against them. And one of the best examples of that is what happened at the BRICs summit in South Africa. Now, you can get a sense of this not from the regular media, which is doing everything it can to diminish what this really meant. But look at the way they're covering it. Let me give you two examples. There's a website based in Canada called Geopolitical Monitor, and it refers to the BRICs as, quote, paper tigers, unquote. In a post on August 31st, it laments the expansion of the BRICs, but presents the City of London line of attack on how to defeat the BRICs, namely, pull India out. The post goes on to say that India made a, quote, major foreign policy blunder, unquote, by allowing expansion of the BRICs and in its leadership of the opposition to the unipolar order at the G20 summit. Now, this is a line that you see elsewhere, and let me give you the other example. The Financial Times had an op-ed on August 24th, which said that Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, lives in a, quote, parallel universe, unquote, because he believes the global majority, namely the countries supporting the BRICs, can take on the, quote, dominance of liberal Western democracy and the US dollar, unquote. Now, this was written by the foreign policy editor of the Financial Times, Con Coughlin, and he describes Russia and China as collapsing economies. I wonder, has he looked at the UK economy recently? How's that doing? Or does he really believe the hype about Russia's isolation? Does he believe the hype about the spectacular economic recovery under Bidenomics in the United States? If so, then the question is, who actually lives in a parallel universe? But what he lays out is that the plan should be to, quote, tempt India into the West's embrace, unquote. Now, these two posts in themselves aren't so important, but what they do show is the intent to break up the BRICs. And the question then is, as I said, who does live in a parallel universe? We see the London Delusions, and I'm going to have a second link in the description section, which is to my most recent article on the British delusions that were expressed in a Financial Times op-ed right after the BRICs summit. So you can look at that in the description section. Now, meanwhile, you have the supposedly deluded Putin delivering an address at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok. And I'll have more details on that tomorrow. But needless to say, it freaked them out further because they covered nothing of what he said about the economic policy and only what he talked about in terms of the military policy while hyping the visit of Kim Jong-un to Russia. Now, I can also just tell you that I can see the new enthusiasm for the end of the unipolar order, the end to colonialism, or what some are calling the second wave of decolonization. I've done interviews recently in television in Algeria, Iran, Pakistan. I did a podcast last night in Canada. And in all of these, there's growing enthusiasm for the potential for Western countries to drop their opposition to these policies and recognize that we've been going in the wrong direction for 200 to 400 years, and instead should embrace the development of the global South as the best way to shake the West out of its policies of war and neoliberalism. Now, meanwhile, the German economy is continuing to tank. Let me give you the example of construction companies. The combination of German regulatory red tape, the rising costs of energy and raw materials, the lack of access to credit, the drop in disposable income, all of these things are leading to a collapse of construction, and firms are being forced to cancel projects. In July, 18.9% of German construction firms canceled projects. In August, this grew to 20.7% of firms. The Munich-based Ifo Institute for Economic Research had a report on this, and they described this collapse as, quote, unprecedented since the survey began in 1991. And they said that, quote, the uncertainty in the market is huge, unquote. Now, 1991 is when they started. This is the point at which Germany unified. And there was an enormous potential at that point. But as Helga Zepp-LaRouche has described it, it was the lost chance of 1989, because instead of linking with the prospects for development in Eurasia, Germany went with NATO and the European Union. And now we're seeing the effects of that. Just as an example, there's a project, the Southlink overland power pipeline from wind parks in the North Sea to South Germany. This is 700 kilometers long. It was supposed to resolve some of the shortages of electricity. Now here's the reality. So far, out of 700 kilometers as part of the plan, only 17.6 kilometers have even been approved. This is what we're talking about with green and other regulatory red tape. They can't get the project approved. The original plan called for completion in 2022. They haven't even approved much of it at all, and now they're projecting 2028 to 2030 as the completion date. This is a poor substitute for the cheap oil and gas that they were expecting from the North Sea pipelines, which of course were likely blown up under US direction. So this is affecting the situation in Germany dramatically. Now on housing, the current coalition government pledged to address the housing shortage by building 400,000 new apartments. They admitted they needed 700,000, but so far last year, less than 300,000 were built. The German Property Federation reported that 1.4 million people will be looking for a place to live in 2024, and most will be unable to find one. And one construction company CEO, Rolf Buch, described the shortage of affordable housing in Germany as, quote, a societal tinderbox, unquote. In the first 4 months of 2023, 437 building firms filed for bankruptcy. So you combine the effects of sanctions, the EU geopolitics, the green policy, and so on, and you can see that Germany is facing not just an uncertain future, but what could become a very hot autumn. Now, what's the exit strategy for this? End the Ukraine war, give up the illusion of a unipolar order, and drop the anti-science green policies. Now, since those in power are unlikely to adopt this program, join our movement to change the axioms of the population so people will fight for real solutions instead of passively and cowardly submitting to a normal, which is actually a move into a dark age. So thanks for joining me today. I will be back again tomorrow. Hello, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Support our independence to produce videos like these. Become a member of the LaRouche organization at thelarouche.org/member. By becoming a member for $25 or more, you'll get special access to the EIR Alert Daily Briefing and Weekly Magazine, which is what I read to stay on top of things.